All right, welcome everybody. Tonight is September 20th, 2023. This is the Upper Dublin School District Finance Committee, and I will call the meeting to order. I'll acknowledge Alima Redding is not able to be with us tonight, but we do have still a quorum with 3 committee members here and several other board members. We have one presentation tonight from PFM for bond refunding. Any introduction to that?
No, I'd just introduce Jamie Doyle from PFM. PFM has been our financial advisor for quite some time now, so I want to thank Jamie for keeping us informed. We chat regularly, and we have an opportunity for the refunding of our general obligation bond 2018. It's not as clear-cut as the last time we had this discussion, but I'll let Jamie walk through, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks for being here tonight, Jamie.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. It's been a little while since I've been in front of you in person, so this is lovely to be here. And I always like to start off talking a little bit about market conditions before we get into the nuts and bolts of the opportunity. So if you turn to page number 2 of my handout, which you should each have a hard copy of, you can see the 3 snapshots of the MMD chart, which may look familiar to you. That stands for Municipal Marketplace Data. And what the top snapshot tells us is we're currently at the blue line. We're still enjoying an inverted yield curve, which we haven't seen in a lot of years, and that means it's the best of both worlds, meaning the short end of the yield curve at which you invest your reserves and construction funds and things like that is finally earning some meaningful interest, and that's in the 5.5% range. So those are dollars that, we didn't have anything to talk about for years when you were earning 1/10% or 1/4%. So that's all good news. And then as you look out further on the yield curve, you can see it dips down a little bit, and then it starts to angle upward, slope upward again. But we're still below historic.
Jamie, can I just interrupt you briefly? Can you try pulling the microphone just a little closer?
Yep, absolutely. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
As you look out the yield curve, you can see the blue line continues to hover below the historic averages. And that comes as a surprise to many people to hear that long-term fixed rates are below historic averages. If you look at the middle snapshot, this same index going all the way back to 1993, you can get a more historic perspective of what I mean by we're not at the all-time lows anymore that we enjoyed in 2021, 2022, but still very attractive below average levels today. And the bottom chart's just a blow up of that same index for all of calendar year 2022 to present, so you can see the fluctuations. If you look at page 3, you'll see your existing debt portfolio, and as always, the top half is gross debt service, meaning principal and interest, and the bottom half is your local share after you get state reimbursement, old grandfathered PlanCon reimbursement on some of your older issues. And you can tell near the bottom the line that says PE percentage. If it has a percentage on that line, it means it's receiving old grandfathered PlanCon reimbursement. The issue we're focused on this evening is highlighted in yellow. It's your GO bond series of 2018. Also near the bottom of the page, you can see on that line labeled call date, these bonds are callable on November 15 of 2023. So that's the first date that you have the option to call those bonds back from the bondholders if you so choose and if it makes economic sense. To walk through the mechanics of how this would work, on page 4, you'll see all of your 2018 bonds. So if you do nothing, you'll continue to make the payments you see on page 4. And you can see you have the interest rates locked in column 3 currently that range from a 2.6% on the short end to a 4.5% on the long end of that issue. Final maturity is slated for May 15th of 2043. If you look at page 5, this is the portion of the 2018 bonds that we're proposing to refund, not all of them, because A, we want to keep the issue under 10 million when we do the refunding, and B, we're refunding the middle and longer end of the issue where the rates are higher and there's more savings to be had. Page 6 is the portion that would remain outstanding, and so you'd keep making the payments on page 6 on those remaining 2018 bonds. Page 7 is the escrow that we would set up. You're allowed to have up to a 90-day escrow on a current period refunding such as this one. And so that escrow is more important than ever, again, because of that inverted yield curve. So you can see in this escrow, there are certain permitted securities you can invest, but in column 7, you can see you're able to earn about a 5.5% in the escrow, and in column 8, that equates to about 131,000 of interest earnings, rounding up slightly. So that's a positive to the transaction, that investment rates in the escrow are also very attractive. And then finally, on page 8, you'll see, most importantly in column 4, the yields that range from a 3.66% to a 4.12% on the long end. Those yields would generate net savings in column 11 of about 194, rounding up slightly, $195,000. Starting at the top of column 11 and working our way down, you can see the bulk of the savings would be recognized in the current fiscal year, and then a couple thousand, plus or minus a little bit, compared to your old existing payments each year thereafter. At the very bottom of column 11, I'd point out 2 things. This is a very, very sensitive refunding. The present value of 0.1% moves the needle on the savings about $93,500. So if we were having the sale today, we wouldn't actually be at the levels you see in column 11, but because this is so sensitive, it doesn't need much help from the market before, it would be very attractive. So we're going to suggest that you follow the procedure you've followed in the past, which is get the paperwork in order, set a minimum net savings target to the district, and be poised to move quickly if and when we get that last little bit of help from the market. The other thing I would point out at the bottom of page 8 is this issue you do not get reimbursement from the state on, which is actually good news in the case of a refunding, because it means you don't have to share any of the savings with the state either. So you see they get 0 in that bottom box. If you look at page 9, there's a sample motion for your consideration if or when you'd like to authorize the finance team to go ahead and get said paperwork in order. The finance team, as always, consists of myself as your independent financial advisor, RBC Capital Markets as underwriter, and Saul Ewing as your bond counsel, and of course your solicitor would be involved as well. And we're suggesting a minimum net savings target of $193,300, because that's 2% of the refunded principal, which is the historic benchmark and the target that the district has often set as a minimum historically. As always, it's my job to save you every dollar that I can, but that would be a minimum threshold that we'd suggest. The timeline at the bottom of page 9, tonight's a Finance Committee meeting. If you were inclined to pass the motion above at your voting meeting next week, we could be back with said paperwork for your consideration at your October 23rd voting meeting. And then you'll notice the pricing or the locking in of the rates and the savings says to be determined beside it, because again, that would be based on market conditions. And then whenever that sale occurs, settlement would be roughly 35 days later. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. I know that's a lot of information, but we just want you to be poised and ready to move quickly, because it doesn't take much to really make this work.
All right, thanks, Jamie. I was actually a little surprised, given market conditions, that this looked like it might have a chance of saving us money at all in the current conditions, but I see we're really close to the edge here.
We are.
And certainly helped by, for the first time that I remember doing this, helped by the interest income on the revenue side. It's never really been nearly as big a factor before. Any questions for Jamie? Art?
The 193,300, is that after all
Yes, net, as always.
expenses, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I would also add that, getting the paperwork in order, you're not incurring any costs. We won't, the first cost you ever incur is the credit rating fee, and we won't actually initiate that process with the credit rating agency until we think we're there.
You said we're not there yet in terms of the rates. How far away are we?
You need about 0.4%.
Oh, that's okay. And what do you look at? And is it the 30-year or?
Well,
Is that would tell me something if I look at the 30-year?
Yes, it would tell you direction, if that's moving downward, and moving in a favorable direction. The MMD index would be doing likewise. The MMD index that we
right.
looked at on page 2 is the tax exempt index that we
They use, yeah.
follow and use
Right.
to price bonds.
And would these be callable in approximately 5 years
Yes.
again?
Yep. Yep, that's what, part of why we wouldn't refund all of the bonds. We want to keep the refunding bonds on page 8, at or below that $10 million threshold. That's
Right.
part of what gets you the 5-year call.
Right, got you, thanks.
Anyone else? Jenna?
So just following up on Art's point, so is it that we're, the trigger point, so to speak, is to get where the inversion gets back to that historical average? Is that kind of the rough point in time?
Well, the inversion has flattened out a little bit. The more inversion there is, the more
The
that
longer- yeah,
that
the
helps
longer the
you.
average, yeah,
But
yeah.
It's really a function of those long-term rates on page 2, because this issue, again, still matures on May 15th of 2043, just like it always did. So it's those longer-term rates realigning and decreasing a little bit. I mean, 0.4% is really not all that much.
Okay.
Jeff?
Jamie, could you flush out for us, or at least for me, the earnings you mentioned from the escrow? Like, I think you said it like $130,000. Could you explain the relationship of that to the savings overall? Is it inclusive? Is it exclusive? How does it correlate?
It's all inclusive. So basically, we use those savings that you see in column 8 on page 7. We use the earnings in the escrow to downsize the amount of the security we'd purchase for the escrow. So, and then we're sizing the overall refunding based on the cost of that escrow and the other cost of issuance at settlement. So that's all, when I say, $194,000 roughly, that's net of all cost of issuance, of the escrow itself. And as I mentioned earlier, if it got state reimbursement, it would also be net of that, but that doesn't come into play on this one.
So we're using that escrow as a tool to get to that overall savings?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Anyone else? All right, well, so the decision, well, we have a decision to make later in the meeting. Actually, it's probably it is the first item in the meeting. So we'll have a discussion about whether to move forward shortly. But thank you for the presentation, Jamie. And let's move on in the agenda. Any announcements?
There are no announcements.
All right, we do have minutes from our August 16th meeting. Members of the committee have had an opportunity to review them. Are we prepared to accept those minutes? Yes. Okay. So those minutes are accepted and will show up at the legislative meeting. And right into the first item, which is the proposed motion as written, outlined, and as outlined in the presentation, whether to authorize the administration to pursue this idea, no cost to be incurred until we actually pull the trigger at some point in the future. Are we prepared to move that forward? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the Sandy Run update. Bob.
Sure, Sandy Run, not much more to mention over the past month compared to the previous months. The majority of the construction is done. We're really down to punch list items right now. We had some more inspections from the township. We have again, reissued a temporary CO with a very small list of what needs to be completed for our permanent CO. So I would expect we have our permanent certificate of occupancy very shortly. We're just reviewing a few issues with the township, very minor where we're at. We have, again, fields are growing in nicely. We expect to be able to start using the grass fields this spring. latest will be the fall, but everything looks good. The baseball fields are coming in. We have, if you look at them now, there is some dressing that we need to do, but with the fall planting season still ahead of us, any spare spots are going to be planted. We should be in really good shape moving forward.
Yeah, and if I can, I'll just add a couple of things to that. So I'll mention, Bob, the planetarium dome is currently in process of being replaced. So if you remember, we had an issue with staining on the dome that we worked with our insurance company. They're still doing work behind the scenes with our contractors, but we had a discussion internally with Dan, with Dave Hoffman, Dan Ortiz, Dave Hoffman, the folks that manage the planetarium itself, and we decided that it was best, since our contractors were ready to just get that work started, that we get it done, get it finished, and get it back online as quickly as possible. So rather than push this and wait till next summer. So that is happening. The solar panels, I'll bring that back up and just let everyone know, it's been a month, and I do not have any significant updates to provide at this point. We are still waiting on our professionals to finalize all of the final design and work that needs to be done. We are still waiting on Borough Construction to provide us a final cost on that, and we're still waiting on lots of other information. So I have connected with our solicitor and had some conversations, which I can certainly provide in a different venue, an update on that. We've also had conversations with our professionals about the lead status. So Zach of Dewey did confirm today that the lead submission has been submitted, and it's currently under review through the process that it goes through. Zach is not anticipating any issues as far as that goes with the solar panels not being active, but he will continue to monitor that and let us know if anything comes up, and he'll address that as needed. And then on the budget standpoint, I'll just jump in and just say I don't have anything. There's no significant items to mention as far as the budget goes, other than those open items we're working through.
Once we do get that permanent CO from the township, is that when we get the township escrow money back?
That's actually a good question. So there's two separate buckets of escrow money, right? There's the land development escrow money, which we do continue to get back as we complete the site work around the building. As far as the permits and inspection, we have not had that discussion about when we close out that account, but I assume that it would be when we receive the final CO, maybe another month, just to make sure there's no other invoices coming through. Typically, their invoices that they send us are on a month to two delay, so we'd probably give it a month or two and then talk to them about closing it out.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions on the Sandy Run update?
Let me just, looking at the budget, the money that is still with the township, the escrow account balance is $332,000, right? And the land development is $147. And then we have the 539, I'm sorry, 539. So it's over, almost $1 million, it's over $1 million, right? Am I right?
We have 322 that's remaining in the budget for the permits and inspections, 332 that are remaining in as the escrow balance, roughly 332, and then yes, we have the
386 or?
The 386. No, that's the reimbursement. I don't know, this page got cut off on it printed.
147?
332 is the top. Give me a sec.
And the 147, I guess, right?
The 386. The 386, correct.
Oh, that's the total balance, okay.
That's the remaining balance for the land development escrow.
And that will be reduced in another month or two, I assume.
The land development escrow so we have to apply to the township to get the land development escrow reimbursed to us as we complete work and they inspect the work. The other account is permits and inspections, which they just draw on as they have fees. So we haven't worked out what the process is to recoup that money from the township. but they would owe that all back to us at the end of the project.
So Mark, the escrow account balance is 332, and then the land development escrow is 386. So just add those two, and that's how much money they still have.
Correct.
At the moment.
At the moment. It will be reduced, but we should be getting a good portion of those.
Yes, but remember, I just want to make sure we're clear on the land development escrow, right? The land development escrow is not like money we're getting back and it will be a net positive to the overall project, right? The land development money is money that is in the GC's contract. It's work that they've done. And then as that work gets done, they release that back to us. So that's not a net benefit to us as far as the project goes.
Is it a zero?
It's a zero.
It is a zero, okay.
Correct.
So we're just looking at the 332.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions on the Sandy Run update? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the gym roof replacement at Maple Glen. We have a change order.
Yes, so the work has been completed for the Maple Glen gym roof, so we now have our standing seam metal roof. It should be good for the next 50 years on top of that building. We did have one change order through the job, and that was for plywood replacement, which was the unexpected. When you pull the shingles off, we're not sure how much plywood was damaged. Our architect, Michael Johnson, was here on site. Reviewed every sheet of plywood that needed to be replaced, and he did have an allowance for unit pricing built into the bid package. So we had a set price at bid day for what that would be. It was $3.75 a square foot, which was an excellent price for the plywood replacement. So the total change order for all the plywood that we needed to replace was $4,425.
Any comments or questions? All right, we'll move that forward. All right, yes, thank you. We have a proposal for the varsity softball field.
Yes, so we have a couple new items coming up on the next few items here. So the first one is a proposal from Architera for the Upper Dublin High School softball field. And I'll give a little background on where this is coming from and then talk about kind of what we're looking to have done. And Matt Hyland does send his regards. He was unfortunately not able to be here tonight, but he will be available on Monday or Wednesday of next week if there's any follow-up questions. I keep forgetting it's not Monday. So the varsity softball field was actually one of the final items that was evaluated related to our ongoing insurance claim from our tornado damage. And Utica, after that final evaluation and determination, they determined that all of the fencing on the varsity field was damaged and is included in their final repair of estimates for the claim. So one of the things we did, we've been hearing a bit about the varsity softball field for some time now. So we started discussions and we engaged ICS and Matt Hyland to discuss repairs and evaluate the potential need for necessary improvements on that field beyond just the fencing and the backstop. So it's similar to our discussion that we had at Fort Washington Elementary School. We had an insurance claim, but we know we had a need there, so we figured this was the right time to start that discussion and determine the best way to proceed. So I think the need is, as we met with Matt and started to discuss this, one of the primary needs was identified that the field actually does not meet PIAA standard length between the plate and the backstop. Which should be 25 feet. So if you think of where home plate is to the edge of the backstop, we have about 10 feet there. The standard is 25 feet. So there's no real way to just take the backstop and move it back because it's right against sort of the back and the road over there. So the only thing that could happen to resolve that would be to take the whole field and move it out away from like home plate and move it out away from the backstop. So that's one of the primary needs we have there. The other thing that we talked about is, when you look at the varsity baseball field is how do we sort of create an equivalent field there? One of the things when you look at that would be to add a permanent home run fence. Matt Hyland is also concerned about the space between the road that you drive on to access those fields and the one player bench is right there on the first base side. Creating that space would also add additional space for spectators, which would create a safety, more of a safety issue between players and spectators. to help resolve some of that. And then also, we would be looking at the backstop on the varsity field is old and needs to be replaced, but the backstop on the JV field is in just as bad a shape as the varsity field is, if you haven't been out there to take a look at it. So this proposal sort of says, okay, we were focused on the varsity field, but while we're there doing this work, we should resolve the backstop issue on the JV field as well. So working with, and there's a number of other things in this proposal too. So, you know, we asked Architera to sort of put it all in, and we would evaluate it all. And then we would come back with a design that sort of says, here's what the needs are, and an estimated cost of that project, and then all of the other possible items that could be discussed. As an example, Matt Hine believes that, you know, the dugouts are something where we may not need fully enclosed dugouts, but there's a solution there that other local teams that they play utilize for dugouts that would be less expensive, but still very reasonable for what the teams would need. So working with ICS, Architera provided the attached proposal, and the reason we went with Architera is because this is related to our insurance claim. Architera has been instrumental in the work they've been doing with ICS and the recovery work for all of our athletic fields at the high school. So they've been involved with those repairs from the beginning. So they provided this proposal just to kind of keep that going and be consistent. The proposal provides key services such as all the upfront work, design, development phase. So they'll coordinate with our team, develop a plan, and to achieve our project objectives. They'll include, like I said, bid alternatives for us to consider. Not everything in their proposal, as I said, is a need, but there's some things that could be considered. An example of that, Matt points out that having bullpens, which is a standard of what you find in other local fields, might be something that we want to consider. And then construction documents phase to develop all documents needed to complete the public bidding phase. And then as we proceed through public bidding and construction, ICS has been a trusted partner through this entire process. So we would recommend, if we get there and the board's supportive of this, to continue to work with ICS to finish out these projects. As far as funding goes, we obviously would go through this process to get a full budget done on this, but we have estimates, rough ballpark estimates of about $750,000 to achieve this project, plus construction management services. So I would recommend that this be paid out of our capital reserve fund, but specifically with insurance proceeds that would cover this entire project. So insurance proceeds from two places. One is an agenda item that we'll cover later in the agenda, around 1.5 million-ish or so that we received back from Utica for value engineering and credits on our insurance claim project, which again, I'll go through that more in that agenda item. And then similarly to that, we would expect to receive the value of the fencing that would have been part of the insurance claim back from Utica as well. So that would be $233,000 that we would receive back from Utica that would help to fund this project as well. So this project could be fully funded with insurance proceeds that we receive back from Utica. As far as impacts go, moving this field and putting a permanent fence up does not impact our athletic programs in any way. So if you're familiar with that field, you have the varsity softball field and the JV softball field, and then in the middle of that are our grounds crew does have a soccer field painted in there, 11v11 and a 9v9 field in the middle of that. So we believe we would, it's likely we would lose our 11v11 field, but we believe there'd still be enough room for a 9v9 field. So the Upper Dublin Soccer Club would be directly impacted by that. But again, there's two other fields in that location, and we also picked up two new fields over at Sandy Run Middle School as well, which we've talked with the soccer club about. So the project would be tentatively scheduled for summer if we decide to move forward. So we would let the whole season, the softball season, go by, do the work over the summer, and get this moving. So that's the recommendation, is to start this all off with Architera doing some of that pre-design and preparation work for us. So, Mr. Lester, if there's anything I missed that you want to add, feel free.
No, everything was covered.
So be happy to take questions.
Can I just clarify, the soccer field that's between the varsity and JV softball fields, there's one field that's sort of painted or can be painted as either 11v11 or 9v9. It's not that there's an 11v11 and a 9v9 field. There's one field that's either, can be used
It's
either way.
painted, the white lines are for the 11v11 field, and inside that field, we have separate red lines are the 9v9 field.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's one field, not two fields there. Any comments or questions on this proposal? Jenna?
So one clarification and one comment. The clarification is, I know we've had some discussion in this forum about the softball field at the middle school, so I want to make clear, we're talking about the softball field at the high school, first and foremost. And I know use of the word varsity should have made that clear, but for anybody who's confused, I just wanted to point that out. The comment I have is, regarding the loss, if you will, of the 11-by-11 soccer field, while not ideal, I think as we've talked about here before, we have to make sure we are first and foremost focused on the facilities that we need for the programs that we run, and that's what we're talking about here. So this is, I think, really valuable work that will benefit our actual school team. So to clarify, we do not use those soccer fields for any school-related sports. And I'm getting a nod, so yes. Okay.
Just to clarify, it sounds like estimated it could cost us $500,000, right? Because you said there was $250 that we would get back for the fence approximately, and $750. But if we didn't do the project, that $500,000 would still go back into capital reserve, correct?
The 233 would go back into the reserve along with the 1.5 million that
Right,
I'm
and along with the
recommending tonight.
1.5.
Yes.
Right. Okay. But I'm not suggesting that we do that. The other question I have is, it just seems like it's an opportune time to look at the JV softball field too, to see if there are any significant concerns we have with that field. Can that be, is there a reason we did not include that? Is that field okay?
That's part of the reason why we engaged Matt Hyland in the conversation. I don't see any reason why Architera couldn't take a look at that field as well, and if there's any other recommendations they would make. I mean, like I said, obviously, we're talking about the backstop needs to be
Right,
fully
the
replaced
backstop.
on that
But
field.
while they're there and while they're on the ground, so if we need some work done on the JV field, I think this would be a good time to do it. But
Yes, we can ask that they take a look at it. We are addressing grading through both fields because moving, it's just not as simple as moving an outfield out. There is a bit of a hill, so it will
Right.
require regrading, moving dirt around, so they will be taking a look at the entire area.
Okay. Okay, and did we consider talking about this project with UDJAA? They use those fields too, don't they?
Correct, UGJ softball. Their primary field is the 60-foot baseball field there, and they've actually been a partner. They maintain that field.
Which field?
The 60-foot baseball field that's directly behind. So we do have conversations with baseball and softball on a regular basis.
Okay. I'm just wondering if they would be interested in perhaps doing a little extra if they made a donation on those softball fields. It's just something to consider.
Any other comments or questions? Jeff?
Andy, you said summer work. We're thinking summer of '24?
That's correct.
And Architera is, why is that echoing so bad? Comfortable getting everything designed, and we think bid in that timeframe. Yeah, good.
Yes, I mean, that was, when we discussed this with them, that was part of our thought process and expectation, so yes.
Titia?
Yeah, I just want to get back to the use of the fields for other activities, especially with soccer. I used to be involved with the high school soccer team. At that time, we were definitely using the fields at locales for ninth grade. And I just want to make sure that we're not, by doing this, losing that field because they play 11v11 and not 9v11. So I just want to check on that one. Maybe the field of Reims was used for, at a later point because at some point that was out. And then the community use of the 9v, so the 9v9 you say is fitting, but but the additional 11v11 would be lost. Is that correct? Because
So two things. We've had this conversation with Matt Hyland, and if he were there, I'd be confident he'd be saying the same thing I am, that he assured us that this does not impact high school athletics in any way. There's, as Mr. Lesser mentioned, there's an 11v11 field and a 9v9 inside that. The 11v11 would no longer fit. The 9v9 we believe would fit.
but right now there are two fields.
There's one field there, one's drawn inside the
I'm
other.
pretty sure I just.
The other one is down on the
Yeah.
baseball field side. We're just talking about the upper
Oh, okay.
field on the
Yeah.
softball
Yes,
side.
all right, got it.
Jen, did you have something?
Yeah, so the varsity softball, that's the one closest to the high school. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've spent some time there, and as a spectator, I would be thrilled to see that there's somewhere to sit, because a lot of times you're sitting up at your car watching, or in a spot where you think you're going to get hit by a foul ball. So that's really wonderful, and then to make it ADA accessible is terrific, and I think that's great for our softball players, so they can have a great new field, and everybody in their family can come, because it's going to be easier to get there and watch.
Any other comments? So all we're talking about authorizing at this point is Architecture to evaluate this idea. We're not, it's not necessarily a go yet until we hear more. And we expect to hear that when?
I don't know that it says that, but I can certainly find that out and make sure the board is aware of that. I can share that on Wednesday, publicly, but before that, in email.
Okay, great. All right, any other comments or questions? So we'll move that forward? Yes, okay. Thank you. We have a bid update for the natatorium dehumidifiers.
Yes, as we've discussed in the past, the natatorium dehumidification system was not damaged by the tornado, so we still have the original units. They have really reached end of life and need to be replaced. They run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, maintaining the atmosphere in the natatorium. So we do have a bid package that has been put together with through DJ Fervarelli Consulting Engineers. We've worked with them on other projects in the past, notably the Maple Glen chiller and the air conditioning that was put into the classrooms, the window air conditioners we work with DJ Fervarelli on. So they have put the package together, selected units that would be the best fit for our space, for maintenance, operation, and availability has been taken into consideration for this bid package. So we are ready to advertise this package and to go out to bid and bringing back a decision at the November meeting is when we'd be bringing back the final tabulated bids.
All right, any comments or questions?
You don't need board approval to advertise the bid, right? 'Cause it's,
No, we do not. We just wanted to bring it to committee to make sure committee was good with us moving forward, and then we would bring the results back, obviously, for approval.
Any others? Comments or questions? All right, thank you for that update. Look forward to hearing the results. And we have a bid update for the transportation radio system. And Mr. Robbins.
How you doing? So I'm here. We're gonna we put together a bid specification, and the purpose for the bid specification is the radio system that we're currently using in our school buses is antiquated. there are several dead spots throughout our hilly township, and it certainly doesn't have the reach that we require, especially for the number of non-public schools that we transport to within the 10 miles outside of our borders. So as we've been upgrading technology over the last 5.5 years, this is another piece of technology that we want to upgrade. Another benefit to doing so is having the capability to communicate within our buildings. Right now, if, say, a student misses a bus, the school has to call our office. We have to radio them. The purpose of doing this is being able to join those two communications so that the school can contact the buses directly. It saves time. Bus doesn't get far enough away from the school that it causes extreme, tardiness in getting the students home. So that's just really what we want to do here with this.
All right, so if I understand correctly, we're looking at 50 units built into the buses, 4 handheld units, and then a head unit at the transportation center, right?
Correct.
Yeah. All right, any comments or questions? I'll take that as resounding support. Oh, Titia.
Yeah, sorry. Is this part of a safety, I mean, is this a convenience, or is this also a safety issue?
It works in both. It covers safety as far as just communication. Currently, right now, if, God forbid, there was an emergency with a student outside of the radius that our current system can communicate with, the driver hopefully has a cell phone, or a student has a cell phone that can communicate with us. This should give us a broader range, so that will definitely increase safety in that regard.
So then in terms of funding, can this come out of we still have some safety specific funding, I believe?
So this was planned for as part of the transportation budget this year. So it probably could be directed out of safety, but we have that fully planned for this year with the security camera refresh that we did, and with the work that we did at the Maple Glen entrance with the nurses suite. So that money was fully appropriated in the budget this year.
Any others? All right, so we'll move that forward? Yes. All right, and we look forward to hearing results in November. And maybe you want to stand right back up, Chris. Oh, it's going to be Bob. Oh, yeah, it's Bob. It's not transportation. We're talking about purchasing our first electric vehicle.
Yes, so we, per our vehicle replacement schedule for maintenance vehicles, we have a 2008 van that's due for replacement this year. We had budgeted $62,000 for that. While doing research on a new van, made some discoveries, talked with dealers that Ford now has fully electric vans, E-Transit vans, and the price is very reasonable, very close to the price of a standard traditional van with a gasoline engine. So we're talking to Bergey's Ford and Sands Ford Red Hill. We've used Sands for our last maintenance vehicle purchase. We are able to get a fully electric van, an E350, for $55,995. We had budgeted $62,000. With the difference in price from the sticker to what we had budgeted, we still need, this van does not come with shelving and pre-installed. Bergey's did quote us a pre-installed shelving units, but we can do that work. Sands can help us with that. Budget for that would be roughly $4,000. And the electric charger we're looking at installing in the loading dock area at Maple Glen Elementary. If you're familiar with the space back there, we have a separate garage with its own electric, so we can feed the charger from the garage, and that the charger itself is under $1,000 to purchase. And with the installation cost, we can do that with under $2,000. So that's going to put us right at our $62,000 budget range, and it'll be a fully electric van. The mileage range on this van is advertised at 126 miles per charge. Just even thinking derating it just to 100, and when we start loading it with equipment, tools, material that we might have to ship around, and if it's at 100 miles per charge, that's still more than we need for a day. Our carpenter is assigned work orders at the buildings. He goes between buildings, and average day is 10 to 20 miles. And a busy day could be 30 miles. We have a delivery truck that if things need to be purchased at a store, pickups from Home Depot, everything's ordered from our business office, and our transportation and mail delivery person will go out and make the pickup. So we're not looking at any long trips for this van. It's strictly within the district itself that will be driving this van, and looking at the miles that we currently put on this van to compare to what the capacity is for this battery. We think it's more than enough for our daily usage.
Comments or questions? Art?
The replacement for it, are you going to advertise that on, there's an old van?
The old van, yeah. So once we get the new
Sell it
van,
over the
yeah,
internet?
we'll put it on the obsolete list. Then we usually go to Municipal and put our work vans on
Right,
Municipal.
municipal, okay.
Titia?
Well, I'm super excited that we're finally going to electric vehicles, even if this is just for inside district use, but I hope that this is the first one of more vehicles, and to get experience with that, I think is great. So I really appreciate the work that was done on this, and let us know how it works out. Thank you.
Other comments and questions? All right, so we'll move that forward. Yes, thank you. Look forward to another new white van. We have our monthly disposal of obsolete equipment, which I think is just a shredder. Yes, just one shredder. It's amazing to me that that's the entirety of the stuff we officially at a board level need to approve to remove in 1 month. But any comments or questions? All right, we'll move that forward. All right, monthly financial reports.
Yes, I'll give a quick update. And first, I'll just say we had our auditors in. We started our on-site portion of our audit last Thursday and Friday, so I know Ms. Baldessano is very happy that all went very smoothly. So there's still lots of work to be done, but their work on-site was smooth and seemed to go very well, and there were no concerns brought up while they were here. So thank you to Ms. Baldessano for all her work, her good work there, managing our auditors and our financials. So as far as our financials go for August, our total receipts, you can see, are in line with prior year, 66% to 68%. So we are very early in the year, obviously, but as far as revenue collections go, most of our tax revenue collections are received in July and August during our discount period. So we have a substantial amount of our revenues that come in at the beginning of the year. On the expense side, obviously, over the summer months, expenses are fairly low. So you can see that we're 4% of budgeted expenses spent to date. So you notice the 1,400 line item is substantially higher than the rest as far as percentage of budget used this year to date, and that was for our summer STEM program. So again, low dollar amounts, but you see a larger percentage there on the income side of the statement. You can see the investments. We are earning over 5% on just about every one of our investments now. If you remember, part of our budget, we talked about having 3% as the standard in the budget. So obviously we are trending better than budget as far as investment goes. So we do expect that to continue throughout the year. On our other financial reports, just a couple items to note. You can see assessed value is trending better than what we had planned, so about 12.9 million assessed value, not revenue dollars. And that's coming from a couple places. 3.4 million assessed value from district initiated appeals, 6.1 million from new developments, and 4.1 million from tornado damaged homes that have been restored. So a large percentage of those homes are now back online as far as tax assessments goes. We have not seen the impact of the old Prudential building yet, so we're still in negotiations with the owner there. So that will obviously take a significant chunk out of our assessed value this year, which was planned for in our budget, but that's still an open item that we are working through. Property tax collections are very much in line with prior years, so we've collected 84.4% of taxes year to date. EIT continues to trend actually ahead of prior year, but if you remember, we substantially increased our budget this year to 6.9 million. Last year, we collected a little over 7.2 million, so things trending positively there. And then transfer tax has been slower than normal for July and August, but again, nothing to be concerned about. So that's all for financials this early in the year, but happy to answer questions.
Anyone have any comments or questions? Jenna?
So Andy, you know what I do, right? I always compare. There were two that stood out to me in particular. One of them makes total sense, which was the interest on investments, where, you know, if you just look straight at percentages, it looks like we're way under where we were this time last year, but that's because we dramatically increased our budget there. So in terms of hard dollars, we're actually doing better than last year. The one, and you already talked about transfer tax, but what's going on with the interim real estate tax? That one seemed to have really jumped. Do we have any idea why? I mean, it's a good story. We're actually further ahead, both in terms of dollars and percentages, even though we increased that budget. But I don't know if there was anything to call out there, if it's just...
So if you look at the assessed value tracking report that I provide, so really, if you remember last year, we did actually build out a little model around new developments and how it might settle throughout the year. We have no insight to how new developments and new homes are going to sell and when they're going to settle and become rateable as far as taxes are concerned. But you can see here that we've had some pretty substantial assessed values from new developments come in at the beginning of the year. It's page 84 in the packet if you're looking, but it's the assessed value report. We've had, you know, $6.1 million in new assessed value from homes hit already at the beginning of the year. So that's where that's being driven from. And again, it's just timing of when that happened.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you for the update. We'll move those ahead. Okay, thank you. A big discussion of capital reserve transfer.
Yeah, so this one it's something we talked about early on in the insurance claim process, but it's been something that's been taken a little longer to work out with Utica than we expected. And finally, in July, it was the end of July, July 24th, they came on site. Actually, their president was on site to kind of see the work that we've been doing and the recovery efforts that have happened over the last 2 years. And we had a discussion around this open item, which was value engineering credits on the project and credits from some of the things that were planned in the insurance repairs and then became part of the larger Giza project at Fort Washington Elementary School when we moved down that path. So tonight I'm actually happy to be presenting, while it's taken a lot longer than we expected and it's finally solidified, is to make a recommendation tonight to transfer $1,537,610.15 to the Capital Reserve Fund. And again, that's coming from the outcome of our discussions with Utica. So basically where that's coming from specifically is Utica has agreed to make us whole for, there's two key areas where this happened, and it happened very early on in the project in this building. If you think about the rooftop units, if you go back to that time, there were a number of, I believe it was almost half of them, 10 maybe, that were damaged on the top of the roof here. And in order to replace them, we were looking at two key things. Did the quotes that we received, were the units compatible with our current system? And two, what was the lead time on those units to make sure we could get the systems back up and running in this building as quickly as possible? So we were presented with two options. Both of those options, when Mr. Lester considered those and working with ICS, our professionals on the project, actually it was Dewey early on in the project, they said, yes, either of these options would work with your systems and keep your building running efficiently for years to come. And one of them was, I think it was like 14 or 16 weeks shorter of lead time to accomplish that. So we obviously chose lead time for equivalent units, and that came with a savings of approximately $285,000 for the units that were not an exact match, but were compatible with our systems. So Utica looked at that and they said, yes, you are owed the full value of a like-for-like replacement for those units. So $285,000 of that is related to the units on top of this building. At Fort Washington, that restoration over there, so the casework throughout the building was the biggest reason for the reduction there. So when you think about it, when we talked about doing a full building, bringing it up to the same standard, parity was the word we were using, we said, okay, in order to manage the cost of the Giza project, we're going to make sure we're going to not take a like-for-like replacement of the same materials that the casework was made of in the older building, which would have been a far more expensive product. But we still got a quality product that will last as long as we need it to throughout the building, and it was a lower cost. And then also there were HVAC and light fixture credits for work done as part of the Giza project, which Utica had acknowledged. And I want to say thank you to ICS for doing all of the legwork behind that and providing Utica with all the information they needed to verify all of this. So there was a little over $1.25 million from the Fort Washington insurance claim that came back to us. So in total, again, it's $1.537 million that we have checks in our hand right now that we plan to deposit and hopefully with your approval transfer to our capital reserve fund, since this was directly related to our buildings and major capital projects. I will also tie this back then too. So when I mentioned as part of the softball field and the funding for that, this is one area where we believe we can utilize, along with the $233,000, which we would also expect to get back from Utica, a portion of these funds to cover that project without actually dipping into our current capital reserve balances. So that's my recommendation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. So, yep, Art?
And this, it's not included, the fence for the softball field is not included in this. This is just, right?
That is correct. That would be additional $233,000.
Good.
Anyone else?
Which, again, I will add, we are talking to Utica about that. We expect that to be the case, but it is, we haven't received the check or we haven't received anything in writing from them. But I do expect that to be, they'll approve that similar to this.
Jenna?
I just have a question because I want to know who to give credit to. So who figured out that we had all these credits? Was it your office? Was it Utica? Was it ICS? Because somebody is owed a major thank you for realizing that, we had $1.5 million of credits coming back to us.
So I'm gonna give most of the credit to ICS. ICS, not only did they bring this was a discussion early on in the project where they said we're going to have to work through this, and they started documenting what all of these changes were very early on in the project to make sure they were presenting Utica with all the information that was needed, because the Giza and insurance claim together was a complicated project, and we knew it was going to be, but they were able to kind of break it all apart and show them this is what we pulled out, this is what's part of the Giza project, and help us work through that. So ICS gets the kudos for that.
Yeah, and I think ICS also, the bulk of this from basically casework, simplifying, but it's basically casework at Fort Washington. I remember the conversation, they don't build them like they used to. This 1969, I think it was solid hardwood. for the casework there, and we said we don't need solid hardwood cabinets. And so I remember having that conversation and saying, well, they're going to pay us for solid hardwood cabinets, but we're not going to buy solid hardwood cabinets for the whole building. So, so it's great that it's finally coming back to us, but we did know this concept was going to happen at some point. Titia.
Yeah, I just want to mention also that aside from the financial benefits, it also allowed the high school building to be open again much quicker than I think anybody anticipated. And to me, while that may be not a financial number on your paper, I think that was another real big gain of this. So again, I think that needs to be mentioned and credit where credit is due. So thank you.
Jeff.
Credit to ICS, but also a shout out to our CFO and his office for staying on top of it and bringing it home.
If we're doing shout outs, I mean, I always take the opportunity to point out how fortunate we turned out to be with Utica as our insurance agent. Not only did we have our buildings back open in 3 weeks, whereas the building across the street that was hit at the same time by the same natural disaster, they haven't even broken ground yet. So it's not completely down to insurance, but we were very fortunate with our insurance selection. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we'll move this forward. Do we need formal board action to? Yeah. Oh, it's a transfer. The transfer needs board action,
yep.
Right? Yes, not to authorize the deposit, but to the transfer. Yes. Okay, so we'll move that forward.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And natural gas. You can read it.
I had it out of order on my sheet here. Yes, the natural gas rate lock. So, no, it is the budget.
That's why I couldn't read it. I was trying to read two things at once. Yeah, it's the general fund budget draft timeline.
I had it ordered. All right, so yes, it is that time again. Again, we're not going to spend too much time on it tonight, but we just start one budget year. Or finish one budget year, and we start a new budget year, and we're closing out a final year, so we're in the middle of 3 years right now. It happens every year. So we are starting the 24-25 general fund budget process already. So what you have before you is in September every year, we begin that process with the timeline. What's unique now for the second year in a row is that the Act 1 timeline, which actually drives school districts' process and deadlines through the budget process, is still not released. It's supposed to be out at the beginning of September, so we still don't have that. It's the second year in a row, so we're not sure why or what's happening there. But what you have before you is a draft of how we plan to work through it. It's not so different from what we've used in the past as it's been working for us. You'll just see a lot of TBDs or maybe placeholder dates that are not finalized yet. So I will be bringing this back hopefully in October with some real dates filled in here, but it's just important to kick it off tonight and just start down the path of what we're trying to achieve by hopefully November if everything goes as planned this year. So what you have before you is the draft here. Page 1 lays out the steps toward the first major budget decision with a deadline that, again, I hope to have by October of next week per the Act 1 timeline. And if you remember, there are two paths that we can choose to go down as far as the budget goes at this kind of preliminary stage of the process. The recommendation to the board, and the board can make a decision to approve an opt-out resolution, which basically says that the final tax increase at the end of the year will not exceed the Act 1 index, or the board can choose to go down a path of a full preliminary budget showing the need for tax increases above the Act 1 index and apply for referendum exceptions for increases in PSERS and special education costs. The Act 1 index has not yet been certified, but it is estimated to be 5.2% this year. And that is, again, a combination of the statewide average weekly wage and the CPI, or inflation. So 5.2% is the Act 1 index. My hope would be that, similar to last year, we can make a decision by November. While I can't confirm that today, I think it would be unlikely that the administration would bring forward a recommendation to proceed with a preliminary budget and apply for exceptions beyond 5.2%. So I'm hopeful that we can move down a path towards November of an opt-out resolution. But again, no confirmation yet, and we'll work through the process. So the process is at next month's meeting, the October meeting, I will bring forward, based on where we're at with our final, the audit won't be finalized, but the numbers will pretty much be in their final state. So we'll be able to provide a final estimate of where we are for the 22-23 year. I'll provide a 5-year projection model, including what our key assumptions are that we'll utilize to build our preliminary budget. And then we'll have a discussion around the opt-out resolution. As far as revenues go, you receive a report on revenues every single month, so we'll continue to monitor that carefully. And then our preliminary budget will be based on the closeout of last year and the preliminary numbers early on in this year. Expenditures will be, for our preliminary budget, will be benchmarked based off of what we know from last year. Any major changes that we're aware of already this year, baseline assumptions, and we'll review that all with the Finance Committee over the next 2 months. We will continue to utilize a needs-based philosophy for our 24-25 budget. That's been working well for us, and I see no reason to make a change in our methodology that we're using. And those detailed budgets will be built in the January to April timeframe. So again, preliminarily, we'll build a budget based off of assumptions, trends, known items, and then January to April is where we'll do a good bit of our work with our buildings and departments to build out those need-based budgets. And then that will ultimately lead to May and June, where we'll talk about a proposed final and a final budget, and then we'll start all over again. So that's the plan. And again, more to come over the next 2 months.
All right, thank you. Who's excited? All right, yeah. All right, comments or questions on the timeline? All right, thank you for that, and I'm going to try again. Now we're up to the natural gas rate lock recommendation.
You got it, the rate lock recommendation. So if everyone remembers, last year we made a change and we engaged Provident Energy as our consultant for our energy procurement. And Provident does work in the electric market and the natural gas market. So our current rates for natural gas, we're currently locked through December 2023. So we started talking with Provident over the summer months to start to put this information together to bring back. So what we have for you tonight to take a look at is Provident will go out and they solicited rate quotes from 5 different suppliers in the natural gas market. What they were able to come back with was UGI Energy Services returned the lowest quote for 36 months at 57 cents per decatherm. So what that means is, as energy is procured on markets that are constantly moving, the recommendation is to lock a not-to-exceed rate in case rates trend up between today and board approval on Wednesday. So over the next week, these markets will continue to move, and we'll monitor them. And then what we will do, the not-to-exceed allows us to lock in rates as long as they're below that. So essentially what the board is approving is a cap on where we want to be able to lock not to exceed those amounts. So there are 2 not to exceed rates in there, if you notice. There's a basis and a NYMEX. So basis and NYMEX together equal the total cost per decatherm that we would pay for natural gas used. And essentially, if anyone's interested, basis is the cost to move the natural gas from the NYMEX equivalent point to the delivery point of the supplier. So if anyone's not familiar, because this was a learning I actually had, the equivalent NYMEX point is the Henry Hub in Louisiana. So that's kind of the basis. That's where the market is driven from. So the market is standard for all suppliers. So no matter what the supplier is, they're buying at the market at that location. So it's kind of our national and international index. What the procurement process goes to balance or compare is the supply side or the basis, which is the cost to move it to our location. So 57 cents is the cost to move it based on the cost that they got on Monday. Okay, so as far as budget impacts goes, the last time we locked these rates in was an extremely low rate. So we're pretty, Provident is pretty satisfied with where the rates are that they're recommending as far as the lock is. But if you notice 22-23, the budget impact, it costs us about $167,000 for natural gas based on the units that they ran for us. This year, we increased our budget to $180,000, and that's because we're going to have half a year through December 2023 at our lower rate, and then we would have half of the year at the higher rate. And then the estimate for 24-25 is $192,000, because then that would be 12 months at the full higher rate. So higher rates, but overall it would be a 6.6% increase from this year's budget. Those numbers are based on the actual rates that they picked up on Monday, so they do not factor in our the not to exceed rates. So hopefully those rates wouldn't go higher. I think they feel pretty confident that the basis rate won't move, but the market rate, so the NYMEX rate being at 420 as their not to exceed, that's where they evaluate the market and say, okay, we've seen tops of the market around 420. So if it spikes above that, then we want to make sure not to lock in while it's above sort of the top of the market, and we would wait for it to pull back down. So that's the strategy we're using with Provident. Provident's been, again, great to work with over the last couple of months. And the recommendation then would be to lock in at a not to exceed of 65 cents for the basis, and then $4.20 for the NYMEX.
All right, thank you for that update. Comments or questions? Jenna?
I just had a question about the chart on page 2. So what stands out to me in the numbers here is how much lower Fort Washington is. Is that because of the geothermal we did? Yeah, I assume so. Okay. You can see what a difference that makes. It's really interesting.
You can see it also, the high school is significantly lower than the middle school, even though the high school is bigger. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we'll move that forward. Yes, all right, thank you. And thanks for the education on that, Andy.
I was given an education myself, so.
Well, passing it along that's good stuff. Financial support for North Hills after-school program.
Yes, thank you. So this is an annual item that we bring before the Finance Committee and ultimately the board for approval. So the Upper Dublin School District has been supportive of the North Hills after-school program for a number of years. A while back, it was through the Upper Dublin Education Foundation, and now it's just a direct contribution to the North Hills Collective for running that program. And we work with them on their educational program, or we support them through their educational specific program in the amount of $45,000. It is an amount that's budgeted for. We talked about it as part of the budget process. And then we pass it through to them as they provide documentation throughout the year to support it. So we do require the collective to provide supporting documentation to justify the amounts released, which is why the motion is written as a not to exceed. So just because we budget $45,000 doesn't mean we just write a check for them and don't do any due diligence on that money. We actually have a process with the collective where we lay out with them sort of how the money is released to them. We do release it in 2 batches, so we release half at the beginning of the year, and this year it's going to be when they provide their end-of-year supporting documentation showing that the $45,000 that we released to them last year has been fully spent on their educational programs. And then mid-year, when they come back to us, it's to basically support that they have expended all of the original $22,500 from this current year, and then we would release the second half to them. So I know Dr. Yanni has worked very closely with Winston in the past over there, who is leading that program. So I know I have a meeting with him tomorrow at 2 o'clock to have this discussion, but we've been in discussion with him since the summertime. So this would just be a standard annual process, just to say, hey, it's in our budget. The board supports releasing not to exceed $45,000 for this program, and then it would be based on the documentation that is provided. So happy to answer questions.
Art?
So it's been 45,000 for as long as I could remember. Do you know if they are running a summer program, or if they ran a summer program?
Yeah, and there was a 5-week summer program.
And how did that get funded? Through the collective?
Yes, as far as I know.
Not from this?
I believe they get multiple funding sources. How they use that to fund all their programs, the township does provide funding. I know the district provides funding. I know they have their own funding that they get from other sources.
Township
but yes.
used to support the summer program. I was curious if they still do. But this money is for after-school program, just for the school year?
It's for it covers all of their educational programs, so maybe that's a bad example, but yes, it's their educational programs during the school year and in the summer.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? All right, happy to continue to support this. I think it's a good program. In years past, there's been opportunities for board members to go see what this money is being used for, an open house or a tour on a day when things are happening. I'm sure if anyone is interested, if you haven't had the opportunity to do that, it is interesting to do. So yes, move that forward? Yes, all right, thank you. And we have a consulting proposal with SABEC.
So the last item is a consulting proposal with SABEC, and Dr. Feely, feel free to jump in, or if you want to add anything. So I'll just give the basics, and then you can sort of add any color that you want to. So as everyone knows, we added a new district safety coordinator, which is an essential position for the district this year, and we recently made a hire. He just started full-time earlier this week. So he has obviously background in as a police officer, a local police officer, but the school district world is a whole different animal. Some of the rules and regulations and our requirements that we are responsible for following. So SABEC Consulting does provide training programs. So this proposal would be to provide a full-day training for our new district safety coordinator. And then additionally, there's an option of additional consulting services at $50 an hour, which would be approved by either the superintendent or designee for additional consulting hours that would be needed to make sure that our safety coordinator can get up to speed as quickly as possible and sort of doing good work for our district moving forward. So Dr. Feely, if you wanted to add anything, please feel free.
All right, comments or questions?
Just, I know they're local. I've heard of them. So I think it's a good thing to use somebody who's local, who knows the territory.
The consultant is actually Steve Beck. He was the county coordinator for many years, about 15 years. And so he is a recent retiree from the county and comes not just with law enforcement background, but with actual responsibility for coordination of the county safety programs throughout Montgomery County, as well as the non-public schools. So he's the best and the brightest locally in the area. So it's really a pleasure that he was able to come and join us. He already did the training. Shay's first day was on Monday, and Steve was there on Tuesday, full day, and is available if needed. So.
Any other comments or questions? Titia?
Yeah, so I look at the syllabus. It's pretty extensive. Can you cover that all in 8 hours? I mean, yeah, I'm just curious.
He did.
Just a light tap is the
He
trick.
absolutely did, but that's why we felt, because of the extensive nature of the job and the fact that Shay is new, we felt that there was a need to be very transparent and say we might need more training. And in the event that happens, the hourly rate is $50 an hour.
All right, so basically this is sort of giving us a heads up that you'll probably be asking for some additional hours at that rate.
Yes.
Yep.
Anyone else? Darlene?
I think I was on the same page with Ms. Sharpier, because I don't think one day is sufficient. I think that when you're coming from one arena into the school district arena, there's a definite learning curve. And one full day, 8 hours, goes by so quickly, and there's so much to take in that right from the beginning, I think we should contract additional days, particularly as he's, getting started. So I'm glad to see that, we're approving, additional time, but I really think it ought to be kind of mandatory that there's additional time, because I just, a few days, 3 days. I just really strongly believe that one day is just not enough time. And an hour here and there seems a little almost too loose for me. I really want something that's a little more locked in, that we know and as a board can feel comfortable that the person that's coming in has really received the support that they need in order to be effective.
Before you jump in, Dr. Feely, so school safety is an executive session topic, and I think it might help us next week to have a more in-depth conversation about where we envision this new position going, what the responsibilities. I know we've talked about it before, but a week in, we might have more to talk about here, especially in light of additional training. So why don't we move this to executive session for Monday? For Wednesday.
I also wanted to point out, if some of my colleagues may be aware, that PSBA has created a school safety institute housed at PSBA, and that it's a whole day of training that is free for all access members, which I do believe we are. And I did experience about an hour of the training, and it is really incredible. It's kind of, they've created a building of classrooms, and it's virtual, where you have screens, and you have an introduction how to respond to different situations. And I know it's being used quite a bit throughout the state. And it's available both to school districts and also our local police department. So, Dr. Feely, if you can look into that, that would be great if we can work with that.
All right, with the understanding that we'll talk more in detail at executive session. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, and I don't want to touch that. I just wanted to touch the financial aspect, which is to point out that it's $50 an hour for those first 8 hours and every hour going forward. So there's no difference in how it's structured financially, as I read it.
Right. Any other comments or questions? All right, so there is the financial aspect that we need to approve. So we'll move that forward to the legislative? Yes, all right, thank you. All right, that concludes the reports and recommendations section of the agenda. We're up to public participation. If anyone would like to address the committee, please step up to the mic. And Mr. Lind, you know the drill.
Before you hit the time clock.
Hang on just a second. I don't know that I hear you. Can you just tap the mic and see if that's on? Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Roland Lind, Fort Washington, the Old Village area. Before you hit the time clock, can I call your attention to your agenda, page 8, bullet number 4? It says, and let me read it for you while you're looking at it, speakers are asked to make the comments relevant to the business of the board. That can be interpreted broadly or narrowly. Narrowly, it means only those things which you're discussing tonight or whenever the committee meeting meets on that particular night.
No, you're free to discuss any relevant
And the other thing
topic.
is so you interpret that broadly,
Yes.
so that anything before the board.
There is just to clarify, at our legislative meetings, there are 2 comment periods. At the first comment period at legislative meetings, it is for agenda items only. For the second comment period at legislative or for any committee meeting, it's open.
Well, it used to be when I came to financial meetings and other committee meetings, it always stated on the agenda, those items that are before the board this evening or this night or during this particular agenda, that are on the agenda. So I just want to ask you to, maybe you might want to
We can look at clarifying language.
Make it more specific so that everybody that speaks before it is known. I was going to make some comments. The time is getting late. You people want to go home too, so I'm not going to be the pain in the ass tonight. But I would call your attention to your 2023-24 budget. I was going to make some comments on some pages on it, and I'll do it at the legislative meeting instead of tonight. But I would like you to look at page 4 under projected revenue. I think that what you have there in positive negative variance was wrong. On page number 5, under various points, but under one point there was capital reserve fund. Based on the previous income that you had on page 4, it didn't make any sense, and I want to make some comments about that. And then there's 2 graphs, or 1 graph that you use on page number 6, and I think, let me just read it. It's a comparative error and a failure to state the initial taxes that the graph is based on. The percentages mean next to nothing in actual amounts, and it takes, and also the taxes then are compounded. Thus, this graph doesn't show the actual amount of money, so the graph is meaningless. So I'm going to talk about that at the legislative meeting. And the last thing is on page number 7, which really got me angry. It says here that Upper Dublin is number 7 under the Montgomery County millage by district. Who cares about the millage by district, because it doesn't mean anything on actual taxes. But on this particular chart, you have Cheltenham as being number 1 and Upper Dublin as being number 7. In actual taxes, based on the rate of the person, the median rate of the personal houses, this chart doesn't say anything about the taxes. In actual point of fact, Pottstown, Norristown, Pottsgrove are lower taxes, even though their millage rates were higher. That's a disingenuous thing. We'll talk about it at the legislative meeting. But the other thing is, under number 14, let's see, where Lower Merion is number 13, they are actually number 1. So you have them as 13, but they're actually, when it comes to the taxes that are made on a median house in a district, they're number 1. So you've listed Upper Dublin lower, Lower Merion lower, and 3 other ones which are much lower as being higher. And people like me, now I'm not an economist, but I am a scientist, and I can read a graph. And I know that those graphs are disingenuous, and we'll talk about that at the legislative meeting. Thank you. Goodbye.
All right, seeing no one else coming to the mic, I will also announce we had no comments submitted online. Is there any comments from members of the committee, the board, the administration? Nope. Okay. All right, so with that, I will announce our next Finance Committee meeting is on Wednesday, October 18th at 6 p.m. We'll start off budget discussion, so make sure you have your dinner first. And we are adjourned.